All right, so get ready, because today we are going deep, deep into the world of cults.
Cults, yeah.
Um, Specifically, we're going to be looking at this group called the Science of Identity Foundation,
Okay.
or SIF,
Cease, got it.
and their leader, Chris Butler.
Interesting.
Now, we've got a really fascinating mix of sources for this deep dive. We've got leaked letters,
Ooh, leaked letters?
forum discussions,
That's always good.
news articles, and even a personal blog.
Wow, so this is going to be pretty revealing then, huh?
Yeah, I think we're going to get a really interesting look into this group, kind of how they operate from the inside.
So kind of like if you're going into a meeting and someone might bring up the Science of Identity Foundation,
Right.
you'll be totally prepped, or if you're just fascinated by this kind of stuff, this is the deep dive for you.
Yeah, exactly. So think of it like a crash course in understanding, like SIF, Chris Butler, and you know how their followers think.
Okay, yeah, that sounds really interesting. Let's start with the man at the center of it all. That's Chris Butler. Or Jagad Guru Siddhiswarupananda Paramahamsa, as he prefers to be called.
Whoa, that's a mouthful.
It is just one of the many names he uses, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Why so many names? What do you think is going on there?
Well, a lot of cult leaders use this tactic to make themselves seem superior and kind of untouchable, like they're not just ordinary people.
Yeah, I can see that. So it's all about creating this image.
Exactly. And when you look at Butler's behavior, especially in those leaked letters, you start to see a very different side of him. It's not exactly what you'd expect from a peaceful spiritual leader.
Yeah, you're talking about those letters where he's like demanding a lavish lifestyle and calling his followers names, right?
Exactly. He's like berating them, calling them a-holes, Even worse.
Wow.
He's demanding money, acting like he's entitled to live this luxurious life. Doesn't really fit the image of a humble guru, does it?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, like, what are his real motivations here?
Right, like what's he really after? It's also interesting how he goes on about other gurus having guruitis.
Guruitis.
Yeah, it means they're obsessed with being this guru figure. But then he demands total obedience from his own followers. It's like, come on, man.
It's pretty hypocritical, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. It's classic cult leader behavior. They condemn the same stuff they do themselves. It's all about manipulation, keeping their followers confused and off balance.
And then there's this whole thing with his name, Sai. He claims Krishna gave him that name, like a divine blessing. But it turns out his old guru gave him that name years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's almost like he's trying to rewrite history, make himself seem more special, more chosen,
It's like he's trying to say, look, I've got this divine mandate. That way no one can question him.
It's powerful stuff. And clearly his followers believe it. It really makes you wonder, what makes people so devoted to someone like Butler? Like, how do they fall for this?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at the structure of SIV.
Okay, how is it structured?
It's very hierarchical, like a pyramid.
Oh, interesting.
Butler and his wife, Wailana, they're at the top. They're the pure devotees.
Got it. The chosen ones.
Yeah, then you've got like layers of senior disciples, regular disciples, students, and then the new recruits at the very bottom.
So like a ladder, you have to climb to the top.
Yeah, and it's not just about status, it's about control. Followers believe the closer they are to Butler, the more spiritually advanced they are. They think they have to prioritize SIF's interests over everything else, even their own families.
Really? Even their families? That's intense.
Yeah, they're taught that their families are like a distraction, a false identification, and that real devotion is all about serving Butler and his mission.
Wow. Talk about pressure, man. I can't imagine putting a group before my family like that.
Yeah, it creates a lot of tension, especially for people who start to question Butler's teachings.
What happens if you question him?
Oh, then you're in trouble. You face serious consequences. Public humiliation, intimidation, even threats about your soul being damned.
Whoa, seriously?
Yeah. Former members have talked about being forced to wear bags on their heads or like these Tilly stickers as punishment.
Tilly stickers, what are those?
Well, they're kind of hard to explain. They're these little round stickers that are supposed to represent like bad karma or something.
That's wild. It all sounds so controlling, so manipulative.
It is. And the threat of losing your whole community, your family, is a really powerful way to keep people in line.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. It is. And it gets even deeper.
Oh, I bet it does.
Yeah.
But we'll have to save that for part 2. Join us next time as we continue to peel back the layers of SIF and explore the potential reach of their influence.
You won't want to miss it. So we were talking about the control within SIF.
Yeah, it's all.
And it goes even deeper than just punishment. They control relationships, marriages, all that.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Marriage outside the group, absolutely forbidden.
Wow.
And even within SIF, Butler often arranges the marriages.
He arranges them.
Yeah, he does. And get this, he condones polygamy for men.
Polygamy. Like multiple wives.
Yep. Doesn't really seem fair to the women, does it?
Not at all. That just screams exploitation.
It does. And it highlights that power imbalance, you know. Women in SIF are made to feel like they need a husband to be spiritually complete.
So it's like their whole sense of worth is tied to this idea of marriage, and Butler gets to decide who they marry.
Exactly. It's all about reinforcing their dependence on him, on the group.
It's like he's built this whole system where everything revolves around him and his approval.
Exactly. And that level of control, it doesn't come cheap. Remember those leaked letters? Some of them were basically begging for money.
Oh, right. Like Seth was having money problems.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Butler's lavish lifestyle probably doesn't help.
I guess not.
So, you know, all this talk of spiritual purity and enlightenment, maybe it's really about something else.
Like money and power.
Could be. And then there's this whole connection between SIF and Down to Earth.
Down to Earth. The grocery store?
Yeah, the vegetarian one.
Oh, right. I love that place. What's the connection?
Well, the CEO, he's a longtime devotee of Butler. And the company is owned by this group called Healthies, Inc., which has strong ties to SIF.
So there's a direct financial link between the cult and this, like, totally normal, successful business.
Seems like it. And it gets even more complicated.
Oh.
Healthies, Inc., they're connected to another group, the QI group. It's owned by these guys, Wiedzy, Iswaran, and Joseph Bismark. Bismark is another Butler devotee, by the way.
Okay, and what about this QI group? What do they do?
Well, that's the thing. They've been accused of all sorts of shady stuff, racketeering, legal trouble in a bunch of different countries.
So it's like this trail of money leading from this grocery store to this group that's potentially involved in serious financial crimes.
It's a mess. It makes you wonder where all the money's going, who's really benefiting from all this.
Definitely. It's a lot to unpack. But let's shift gears for a second.
Okay.
And talk about the political angle of all this. Specifically, Tulsi Gabbard.
Ah, yes. This is where the whole Trojan horse idea gets really interesting. Remember how we talked about SIF followers putting the group's interests above everything else?
Yeah, above family even.
Right. So imagine what happens when someone with those beliefs gets into politics.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Tulsi Gabbard, former U.S. representative, presidential candidate, her family is deeply involved in SIF. Her father, Mike Gabbard, was a state senator, and her mother, Carol Gabbard, she was on the Board of Education.
So both parents were active in politics.
Yeah.
Was there SIF involvement? Public knowledge.
It's interesting because at first Tulsi didn't really talk about her religion. Then she claimed to be a follower of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, which is basically Hare Krishna.
But SIF is different, right? Even though Butler was part of Hare Krishna at one point,
Yeah.
he split off and formed his own thing.
Exactly. And there are signs that the Gabbard family's ties to Butler go deeper than just a shared religion. There's leaked letters where Mike Gabbard is called Krishna Das, which is a classic SIF devotee name.
Ooh.
And Butler himself once said that one of his followers would become president of the United States.
He actually said that, like straight up. That's a pretty bold statement.
It is. It implies that he believes his movement can infiltrate the highest levels of government.
So was Tulsi part of that plan? Like, was she intentionally groomed for power by Butler?
Hard to say for sure, but there are some weird details. One former SIF member said Butler told his followers to, like, boost Tulsi's early music career. They had to call radio stations and request her songs, even if they hated them.
Seriously, that's crazy. So her early popularity wasn't even real. It was manufactured by SIF.
That's what it looks like. And it didn't stop there. The orchestrated support seems to have extended to her political campaigns, too.
How so?
Former members say they were told to work on her campaigns, donate money, even recruit new SIF members under the guise of political activism.
It wasn't just about getting her elected then. It was about using her platform to spread SIF's influence, maybe even further their agenda.
It's clever, right? Using the political system to gain legitimacy and recruit new members. And it goes even further than that. Some of Tulsi's political views line up perfectly with Butler's teachings.
Like her stance on homosexuality.
Yeah, she's gotten a lot of criticism for her conservative views on that, especially early in her career. She opposed same-sex marriage, even worked with her father on anti-gay campaigns in Hawaii. This was back in the early 90s when they were both heavily involved with SIF.
And what are Butler's views on homosexuality?
Let's just say they're extreme. Former SIF members who went to SIF school say they had to listen to Butler's lectures, and they were graphic, filled with homophobic stuff. He called it unnatural, unhealthy, even linked it to AIDS.
That's awful.
It is, and it makes you wonder, did Tulsi's early political stances come from Butler's teachings? Did her involvement with SIF affect her actions as a politician?
It's definitely something to think about. And what about her stance on other issues? Did anything else raise red flags?
Oh, yeah. She's been a vocal defender of Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, and his Hindu Nationalist Party, the BJP. They've been accused of discrimination and violence against religious minorities, especially Muslims.
And does Butler agree with this Hindu nationalist agenda?
Seems like it. Remember how he claimed to be the only true representative of Hare Krishna's founder? It's like he's positioning himself as this defender of true Hinduism against outsiders.
So it's bigger than just SIF. It's about promoting this whole ideology, this Hindu nationalist worldview. And Tulsi, whether she knew it or not, might have become their mouthpiece in American politics.
That's the theory. That's why some people see her as this Trojan horse. On the surface, she's one thing, but her real allegiance might be to Butler and his agenda.
So we've got this pattern of control, possible financial crimes, and maybe even political manipulation. But what about the people who've escaped SIF? What are their stories like?
Some have spoken out, but it's tough. Leaving a group like SIF means being cut off from everyone you know, your family, your friends, your whole support system. It's a huge risk.
That's heartbreaking. To think about the pressure and fear they must face.
Yeah, it is. Two former members who have shared their experiences are Ian Koviak and Rama Ranson. They were both raised in SIF.
What did they have to say about their time in SIF? What was it like?
They both talked about being exposed to Butler's teachings from a young age, including those homophobic lectures we talked about, the pressure to conform, the fear of being ostracized if you question anything. Rama especially talked about how emotionally damaging it was to grow up in that environment.
It sounds incredibly isolating.
It is. But their courage in speaking out is amazing.
It is. What do you think their stories tell us about the bigger picture? About groups like SIF, especially when they might be influencing politics?
They show how dangerous blind obedience can be, how important critical thinking is, especially when dealing with groups that demand total loyalty.
It's a reminder that cults aren't just about weird beliefs or rituals. They can have a real impact on the world, on the decisions that affect us all.
Absolutely. We have to remember that behind all the spiritual talk, there are often other motives at play. Power, money, control. And those motives can have serious consequences.
This has been eye-opening, to say the least. It's unsettling to see how all these things connect. A spiritual leader, a grocery store, a politician.
It shows you that things aren't always what they seem. We have to dig deeper, question what we're told, be wary of groups that want unquestioning loyalty.
You've given our listeners a lot to think about. What are your final thoughts? Where do we go from here?
It's a lot to process, for sure. We went from, the inner workings of this spiritual group to, possible financial crimes and political stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing about these deep dives. You never know where they'll go. It's all about peeling back those layers and, questioning everything.
And in this case, it's made us question the motives of, these powerful people, whether it's a spiritual leader or a politician.
I think one of the most disturbing things we've seen is how SIF manipulates its followers. You know, they exploit their desire for belonging, for spiritual fulfillment. Right. They take advantage of people's vulnerabilities, offer them the sense of community, of purpose, but it comes at a huge cost.
You give up your independence, your ability to think for yourself.
And that's what we see in so many cults. They create this atmosphere where you can't question anything. Obedience is everything.
It's like they twist people's genuine spiritual desires and use them for their own gain.
And those agendas, as we've seen, they can have a real impact on the world. They can influence political decisions, shape how society thinks.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to be aware of this stuff, to understand how groups like SIF work and the damage they can do.
It's about being informed, asking tough questions, trusting your gut when something feels wrong.
Exactly. And if this deep dive has made you curious about cults and their influence, there are tons of resources out there.
Yeah, books, documentaries, other podcasts. There's so much information available to help you understand this.
The more we know about cults and how they operate, the better we can protect ourselves and the people we care about.
That's so true. Knowledge is power, right? It helps us make better decisions, navigate this crazy world.
It does. So keep asking questions, keep learning, and stay curious.
Those are words to live by. Well, that wraps up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you on the next episode of The Deep Dive.